going on, guys? Hope you've been well, or at least as well as you can be doing during these weird times that we're living in right now. Previous couple of videos, we've talked about how to manage your time to make sure that you actually do have time to train and eat well and so on. The most recent video we talked about, in principle, how to ensure that your training is effective. And today, we're going to show you how to apply that to your actual training. Now, if you haven't already, I would encourage you to watch the previous videos because a lot of this stuff would be out of context and might not make a ton of sense if you're watching this by itself. I will be showing you how to use the program template I've created. If you don't have a copy of that, or if you'd like a copy of that, just shoot me an email. My email is down below. If you wanted to, you could use this video as kind of a workout guide. You can follow along with me and do whatever I'm doing if you have the very limited equipment that I'm using in my workout. You can do it that way, but I would really strongly encourage that you get your own copy of the program just so you can actually customize this to whatever you've got at home, whatever you want to do with your training. We're going to be basing all this off of my COVID-19 avoidance training program, aka C.A.T, which is a lower upper repeating split. The setup is basically to allow you, if you wanted to, train every single day without having to worry too much about recovery. But essentially what we're going to do is we'll go to that first workout, so in this case lower A. First job to do here is our daily goal. You don't really have to do this, of course, and I know a lot of you might think this is kind of cheesy, but I'm really big on goal setting. I feel like especially training at home, it's hard to get your head where it needs to be to train properly. So, having a very specific mindset goal helps. In this case, we'll put in a goal, and then we'll move on. So far left, what we have here is exercise selection. This is based a lot on your equipment and your preference. So you'll notice these are just kind of movement categories. They're not necessarily exercises themselves, but in each category, we basically want to choose a movement. In this case, I'm going to choose a Bulgarian split squat. And actually a quick note about this, if you're using an exercise that only trains one side at a time, so in this case, Bulgarian split squat is going to be one leg per, each set. That's probably going to be a better choice if you have limited equipment than something like a dumbbell goblet squat, where you are training both legs at the same time. You're training both at the same time, you're going to need quite a bit of resistance to make this reasonably difficult. But in my case, I'm going with the Bulgarian split squat, really like that movement. And just a side note, if you really wanted to, you can program anything you want in these spots. These movement categories and these drop downs are really just suggestions that I've created for myself, considering the obstacles or the limitations that I'm anticipating people having to get through here. But make your choice there. Next thing here is we are going to choose a complication. So if you have a movement that whatever resistance you've got is just not quite hard enough, we can make that harder by working in a slow negative, pauses, speed reps, etc. In my case, I didn't need to do that because I had plenty of resistance here. Now next, we're going to figure out what our resistance is going to be. If you have weights, obviously use that. Band tension, you can estimate band tension or just input the color of your band. Improvised weight, really whatever you've got here. In my case, I had these 2.5, I think they're 2.5 gallon water jugs. So I'm going to go for 40 total there. There's my resistance. And then we're going to go on to sets. Now, sets and goal, this is going to be more relevant as you're going into your next block update, which we're going to cover in a future video. But in this case, we're going to say I'm setting a goal of doing 4 sets. And my goal for myself on those 4 sets is going to be get to an RPE 8.5 to 9. If you don't know what an RPE scale is, don't worry about that for now. As I'm going through this, I'll hit my first set and I'm going to log the number of reps. So in that first set, let's say I got 12 reps. Next set, let's say I got 11 reps. Next set, let's say 12, and last set, let's say 10. So after I have all of those plugged in, if we continue going across here, we're going to see a total number of reps done for all of those 4 sets. And provided that you actually had a resistance number here, it's going to give you a volume number. These rep total and volume numbers are mostly important for when you go through your block updates to program your next training block. But again, we're going to visit that or revisit that in a future video. Last 2 things here, if you wanted to, you could input a difficulty scale. So for me, I am most comfortable with the RPE scale. If you are used to RIR, you can do that. Or if you want a really simple scale, 1 to 3 is a really safe bet for a lot of novice trainees that I'll use. But for me, like I said, I'm going to go RPE. And then in this case, I would just put in the true RPE for that last set. So that's my hardest set there. If I, let's say, exceeded a 9 very slightly, got up to 9.5 on accident, I'll put that in there. Otherwise, we could leave that blank. Time here, this is mostly important if you think you're going to be crunched for time. You could put in how long this exercise took you in total. So 4 sets of that took me about 18 minutes. And then over the course of this training session, it's going to total out the time for me in a fraction of an hour. All right, now that we've done that first movement, we're going to move on to that hip hinge category. In this case, I've chosen a single leg glute bridge. This is great for glute isolation, and again, doing a single-sided exercise makes it so that I can kind of make the most of whatever resistance I've got here. In this case, I just used body weight, and that was plenty hard for the rep range that I was shooting for. Quick tip about this: when you're setting this up, it helps a lot to set your heel pretty much underneath your knee. So when you're at full lockout, we want to see your heel more or less underneath that knee. And the most important part about this movement is you keep those abs tight as you get that glute contraction going. At the very top of this, we want to see a nice straight line from your shoulder to your hip to your knee. If that's not straight, if your belly is protruding a little bit, or if your hips kind of pass through that plane, you're probably not using your glutes very well. Moving on to the calves, I'm going to go for a single leg standing calf raise. Again, this is one of those that's hard enough that I can use body weight and it's plenty challenging. A couple of notes about a calf raise. One is making sure that you have a high enough step or high enough block that you can get full range of motion. We do want your heel coming all the way down as far as it can reach on the way down. And on the way up, we want you to as high up on your toes as you can possibly get. I probably should have used different shoes for this or maybe gone barefoot, but I was too lazy to get my shoes off. Another big tip for calf raises is making sure that your knee and your hip are both fully extended, but they stay that way throughout your movement. That means we want full lockout at your knee and your hip the entire time. This is basically just to make sure that we are not assisting with our quads or your glutes. If we have any movement at your knee or your hips, your quads and glutes are assisting, and because they're so much stronger than your calves, you very well could end up doing most of the work with those big muscle groups without really feeling that. So if you're one of these people doing like 20 plus rep sets of a single leg standing calf raise, you might, and I'm not doubting your strength, but you might consider filming yourself to see if you are being strict enough with that technique. Otherwise, if that's still plenty easy for you, you can add a weight or add a complication. Those tend to be really effective for calf stuff. Moving on to abduction. I went with a sideline abduction. This is actually plenty hard for me. I went through a bit of a glute strain a couple months ago, so I'm still working through that, trying to make sure my left side catches up. But yeah, that's plenty hard. If you need to make that harder, you can go for like a side plank abduction, or you can go with a weighted sideline abduction. You can use bands for this. That's pretty versatile, but I do really encourage you to train abduction, especially for those of you who are going to be getting back to barbell lifts like a squat or a deadlift when this is all come and gone and we are getting back into the gym. Moving on to an ab movement, I went for a weighted crunch, or in this case, my head is gigantic, so plenty heavy enough. Probably could have added weight for this, but I didn't have weights in this garage. By the way, if you're watching this video wondering why my garage is so messy, leave me alone. I'm in the process of moving. I ended up having Christine anchor my feet. If you don't have a partner to do this, you can get your feet underneath anything heavy. So like a couch would work, a bed would work. You can even put water bottles on top of your feet. Whatever you got to do to make sure that you don't end up tipping over or kind of falling off balance during your movement would help. For your abs, and actually for any movement for that matter, it is really important that you focus on the function of the muscle being trained. So in this case, rectus abdominis, that sheet of muscle where we kind of see our 6-pack or 8-pack, whatever you've got going on there. That sheet of muscle, its responsibility is basically to induce spine flexion. So we want to see some actual forward curvature of your spine. A cue that I really like here is I'm trying to actually reach my shoulders toward my knees, or shoulders toward my pelvis even, to really get that rounding exaggerated. Moving on to hamstring. So hamstrings, quads, finisher, these last three are more or less optional. I mean, all these movements are optional. You can make your workouts as long or as short as you feel like, but I would say that they could be possibly redundant depending on what you chose for your second movement and your first movement. In any case, I chose to increase hamstring volume because my hamstrings do need the help. I went with a Nordic curl, which was a terrible choice. This is going to be a pretty bad demo, actually. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that my knee's been giving me problems. So this was probably a bad choice for me, like having my knee on the ground like that. And you can tell I really struggled to do these reps without pain. So again, not the greatest example, but I'm sure you can find another demo anywhere on YouTube. Nordic curls though, great movement if you're capable of doing them without pain. The only tough thing you're going to run into with a Nordic curl is consistency from one rep to the next. It's really hard to make sure that each rep is equally difficult because you are probably going to be assisting yourself. Most of us are not strong enough to do this with free hanging body weight. Like, we're going to have to support ourselves with our arms. So the more strict you can be with these, the better. If you have the ability to, I'd very strongly encourage you to set up something like a dumbbell leg curl or banded leg curl. Last section here is going to be for endurance. So this is optional. I mean, really all these movements are optional. If you wanted to, you can make these workouts longer or shorter, however you really please. In my case, I went for some sprints. I didn't realize after doing the entire workout, I'm not going to be able to run that fast. And also, I'm not that good at running in the first place. So Yeah, not that fast, but that to me is 100% intensity. That's full out for 20-second intervals, 4 intervals each with a pretty solid chunk of rest in between. I'm programming this basically as HIIT for myself, but you can do so much with this. I mean, you could do any variety of different kinds of endurance work here. You can go for a moderate intensity session here, a low intensity, whatever you really feel like. And then really quickly circling back, so obviously quads are an option there if you wanted to increase quad volume. A finisher on all these workouts, this is going to be kind of like your burnout kind of stuff. Not the most effective thing for the sake of hypertrophy or strength building, but definitely if you are searching for that feeling of intensity, if you are like kind of chasing that pump and you miss that pump in the gym, this is your chance to do that. But yeah, this is my full workout. Most important thing, and the reason that we're kind of logging this so specifically is so that when I go for my next training block, my next lower A workout, I can refer back to this and I can see and make sure that I'm actually increasing work and staying effective in my training. To avoid rambling on, I'm going to cut it off there. In the next video, or a very near future video, we're going to be talking about, or I'm going to take you through an upper workout, and then we're going to talk about how to use this program template to actually program your progression from one block to the next to make sure that you are actually getting something out of these training sessions. You're not just, burning calories. But for now, if you enjoyed, like I said, consider subscribing, drop me a like. If you have ideas for future videos, please shoot me a comment down below, shoot me a message on Instagram, whatever you want. Stay healthy, stay safe. Peace.